Welcome to Happiness, Health and Relationships podcast. If you're looking for inspiration on powerful, healthy habits, you've come to the right place. I'm Angeline and I've been working with people for over 10 years in therapy. And this podcast will cut through the myths and misinformation on healthy lifestyle. I'll be interviewing experts in their field, providing top tips and motivation for 6 elements of living medicine. The 6 elements are reducing stress, exercise and fitness, nutrition, sleep, reducing addictive substances, and how to master healthy relationships. Let's get started. I'm excited. We've got Tom Whitaker here today. He's a Master's of Science in Strength and Conditioning. He's got loads of experience in working with different types of people, from athletes training for the Olympics to, running classes for predominantly women, but men as well. So we're going to get into some myth busting today. We're going to get into some great top tips and advice. Help us. What would you say is the biggest misconception about exercise?
I think for most people when they're first starting out, the biggest misconceptions are just that you have to, or there's one thing that's better than anything else. It's like people often tend to assign themselves to camps, like they're a runner, or they're a weightlifter, or they're a football. Like they'll pick one camp and just commit, when most people, you don't need to, and you probably benefit from doing a combination of things. Now, I understand from a community standpoint, obviously, if you a running club, like those sorts of things can be good. But I think for most people they just tend to kind of slot themselves into camps that they don't know yet. Because when a lot of people start the gym is they're scared of the weights, they just do cardio, or they hate cardio, so they just do weights. When in reality is one's not better than the other, you probably need a combination of all of it.
And I've heard people say that before, that in gyms, especially women tend to go for the cardio machines because maybe they're not as confident using the equipment. But actually strength training is really important, isn't it? Especially for women, once we hit our 40s, 50s, everything starts to fall apart.
I think everyone should do some form of resistance training, because being strong, and I'm not talking like you have to get ridiculously strong and try and be like a competitive lifter, just some form of strength training, because being stronger makes everything in your day-to-day life easier. Walking up the stairs, carrying your shopping, playing with your kids, or as you said, as you get older, it maintains your fitness and your abilities for longer. And even people who come into fitness in later life find they're better than they were during some of that, their middle age, because they're doing things that they couldn't before. And like I said, particularly for women as they age, like bone density and muscle loss is greater than in men. So particularly, for women who, like menopause and onwards, tend to lose bone density a little bit quicker than men. So for them, it can be really important for maintaining stuff like that. Just
to maintain mobility, really.
Yeah.
And I know from my own personal experience, starting to get aches and pains and just feeling really weak. I could actually feel, especially my arms, feel myself just getting really weak. Yeah. And that's when I thought, I need to do something about this.
Yeah.
Why is it so difficult to maintain healthy habits? We're going to be getting into the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine today, or living medicine, because we are kind of living, breathing, systemic structures, if you like, and we need fuel. We are hugely impacted by the 6 pillars, which are stress, exercise, nutrition, sleep, reducing substances, addictive substances, and relationships. The research shows that these 6 pillars, if we can incorporate those healthy habits, if you like, then we're far more likely to be happy, healthy,
absolutely,
longevity, all that kind of thing. And most people know that, especially the nutrition and exercise. The doctors have been telling us forever, haven't they, that we should be eating well and we should be exercising. Why is it so difficult for people, do you think, to maintain any exercise regime or nutrition?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons. I think the big one is psychological, which you'll know better than I do, because a lot of people, particularly while fitness is very, very popular now among younger people, 30 years ago, young people, other than playing a sport, they weren't in gyms. They weren't being taught about health. They were kind of told, oh, do this, but not how to manage it themselves. And so for a lot of people, they've grown up without that background. And then in later life, when you've got extra stresses, you've got extra priorities. And then now with the internet age having so much information and not all of it correct, it can be a bit overwhelming because they don't have that background in it. Like, I know it well because I've spent years studying it, whereas most people don't have that background. And then again, in terms of psychological stuff, particularly when it comes to nutrition, there can be like emotional responses to food, which is a whole different topic in itself. And then I think the other one with building habits is you're often overriding old ones, because a lot of people talk, oh yeah, I'm going to start this new habit, and they act as if they are a complete blank slate of a person, but they've got no previous habits. It's like, oh, okay, I'll just do this now. When in reality, particularly again if you come into fitness in later life, is you've got decades of previous habits that will always try and override the new one as soon as things get a bit difficult. So there's almost that extra level of having to overcome something at the same time as trying to add something in, which again, it can get very overwhelming when you're trying to do multiple things at the same time. And then I think on a physical standpoint is unrealistic expectations. And again, some of this is peddled by fitness professionals who set unrealistic standards in terms of what you have to be able to do or what you should be able to do in a certain amount of time, that kind of, because a lot of people will go from not doing anything, deciding that they want to do something, which is great, but then going to the extreme of, oh, I've never run in my life, I'm going to do a marathon next year. Or they're going to go, oh, I've never lifted a weight before, but I want to do what that person's done in 6 months. That person's been training a decade. And sometimes people bite off more than they can chew.
There's no longevity in any of that, is there? You know, we're bombarded by these messages that these quick fixes, really. Do this diet and do this type of exercise. Don't do this. And, you know, a lot of it is confusing. We don't know what to do. But also, you know, it's just, then that makes it difficult to sustain, I think, because we start to get confused. And also, we live such stressful lives as well these days, don't we? People are tired. I think our culture has become not conducive, actually, with living medicine, with healthy lifestyle. You know, all of our energy, we're kind of taught to work hard, do this, you know, running around after the kids, and there's lots of people that you just don't have anything left at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And then, you know, try to get motivated to cook a meal or, you know, go to the gym. Personally, I have to go in the morning because if it gets to nighttime, I'll have talked myself out of it by that time. You know, it's almost like a cultural thing now that we don't have time. You hear that. I'm sure you hear that all the time. We don't have time to put these healthy habits in place, but actually it is a lifestyle thing, you know, that we can form these habits. Where do we start? What's doable?
Yeah, so the good thing is that when you're new to something, you get a lot of response out of a small stimulus. So by that I mean you don't have to do anything drastic in the beginning because your body will respond pretty well early on. So from a nutrition standpoint, for most people, is get a minimum of your 5 a day. Because what a lot of people forget is that the 5 a day is like minimum. Not, oh, you've got 5, you've done amazing. It's to get things that you need to be healthy, 5 a day. To get enough protein. And again, you'll hear a lot of people in fitness, they're talking about really high amounts that like high-level athletes and very muscular people take. You don't need quite that much. Getting enough protein is important. And actually, carbs and fats, as long as your calories are accounted for in terms of what goal you're trying to achieve, probably doesn't matter that much in terms of how much carbs. Like neither one's bad, neither one's better than the other. So 5 a day, get your protein, and then a calorie target or an eating routine that fits the goal you're trying to achieve. From a training standpoint, is honestly break yourself in gently. Couch to 5Ks. a lot of clients would come to me asking about running, and I tell them to do the Couch to 5K because I couldn't. It's pretty well written, and anything I did differently would be different for the sake of it, not because it's better. So anything that starts you off nice and gentle and slowly ramps you into something, it's perfect.
I like that. Chip away at it.
Yeah. You'll know from the classes is if there's someone who's only been in it a couple of weeks, I'm not pushing them the same as I would someone who's been in it for a year. Because like people who are stronger, if I know they've got a little bit more in the tank and they're adapted to that stimulus, that training style, I know they can handle a bit more. But someone who's new, they might be a little bit sore the next day, or their technique might not be as good yet. So then it's just do what they can and don't push them beyond that because it's probably going to backfire.
And have fun with it as well. Don't take ourselves too seriously, I guess, where, well, my motto is just keep turning up, do what you can. And just, like you say, I really like that chip away at it, playing the long game, just keep turning up, do a bit of something, even when you don't feel like it, just going to turn up and do something. And
that's one thing I think general population can take away from athletic populations. So like you mentioned, like Olympic athletes, is they've got a 4-year plan,
right?
One Olympics to the next. They're not thinking, what are we going to do for the next 6 weeks? They're thinking, right, in 4 years' time, this is where we want to be. Or even for some of them, they might not compete in the next. It might be an 8-year plan for the Olympics after that for some of the junior athletes. And so there's always, although there is variation over that time, there's one overarching goal of an overall improvement in whatever they need. But like you say, a lot of fitness is, let me do this in 12 weeks. And then they finish the 12 weeks, it's like, what next? And then they kind of hit a bit of a rut. They feel like they've kind of lost their mojo is what you hear a lot. And they kind of just don't know what to do, lose motivation, and they fall out of the habits that got them to where they've got in the first 12 weeks. And I think if a lot of people, as you said, looked at it as a longer term habit as opposed to a quick fix, it would solve a lot of problems. Because people would take their time with it. They wouldn't feel as much pressure, which again, it adds to the stress when there's pressure to do something in a certain time frame. And you've just got a better chance of fitting it in with your life.
Being aware of the different industries as well. Like there's a whole protein industry now, isn't there? That, when you go around the supermarket, we've got protein pancakes or, protein in things that, random things, but being aware that actually people are pushing protein because there's a business there. Which, like you say, it is important, but not to the degree that's,
So again, because I've competed in bodybuilding, the requirements in certain sports are a lot higher than what the average person needs, just because the demand is higher. But your average person who's just trying to be fit and healthy doesn't need anywhere near as much. So, for example, for your average person, I say roughly 1 gram to 1.2 grams for every kilo of body weight. So if you weigh 80 kilos, eat, say, 80 to 100 grams of protein. Now, when I was getting ready for my shows, I weighed, again, in the 70 to 80 kilo range, and I was pushing 200 grams.
Wow.
So again, certain sports have higher requirements for a reason, and you'll hear a lot of fitness professionals talk about those sorts of numbers, but it's like, but that doesn't apply to people who just want to be fit and healthy. There's a very specific and it's not necessarily a health focused reason either. That's the other thing. That's
really helpful. So per kilo, around about
2 is a good start point.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And some might find for hunger reasons they need a little bit more because protein could be satiating. Obviously, anyone with medical stuff or with consult your doctor with if there's any specific requirements. And then people who want to push into the more extreme, like training a bit harder, competing in certain sports, might need a bit more. But again, that will vary depending on the sport you're doing.
So I guess, the biggest myth with both of those, because we were, told for so long to eat less, exercise more.
Yeah.
And, job's a good one. But actually, we need fuel, we need energy. Yeah. It's no wonder people are going round so tired. And I know that before I started to go into the gym and started to learn a bit more about nutrition, I wasn't eating enough. And I was just so tired. So that's new information as well, isn't it? That we actually need to eat, more than we think, really. Yeah, more than I thought, certainly.
The move more, eat less is well-meaning, but an oversimplification. So genetically, everyone has kind of what you could consider like a set point, which is kind of a range of body fat where their body is at its healthiest. So going below that is probably meaning your body's having to work a lot harder to stay functioning properly. And then if you go kind of above that, that's again, the body's just put under more stress to perform its bodily function, so it's not efficient. And men tend to be a little bit leaner than women on average.
Mm-hmm.
There's always exceptions, but there's almost like a range in which this is where my body feels its best. And yes, there might be the odd occasion you push a little bit lower, say for like you're going on holiday, you want to look that little bit better, but it's a temporary thing. If you want to be at your best, there will be that little range, which isn't necessarily as skinny as possible.
Yeah.
Because like you say, and I know we've had this conversation before, is when you get into those lower ranges of trying to be as skinny as possible, is your body just can't fuel its normal daily functions at the extremes. You are tired all the time. Dropping too low below your needs interrupts your sleep, which then, if your sleep's thrown off, everything is made worse. Sleep is like hugely important. I think the biggest one at the minute is because more people are overweight than in previous generations. It was given as an oversimplification because the average person might need to lose a bit of weight to be in their personal healthy range. But like you say, is that the nuance of, but there is such a thing as too lean to be healthy, was kind of missed off for a lot. And so people did just like the supermodel look of just getting as skinny as possible, thinking that was better for them. It's not quite. There is like a diminishing returns at the bottom.
And that's why I like the chip away at it approach, the kind of keep turning up. And, you know, if you do need to lose weight, then, you know, to work with a personal trainer, a nutritionist to know how much to eat. Because if you go too extreme with it, you're going to struggle with the workouts. You're going to, you're going to, you're just going to hate it because it feels awful. So again, playing that long game, chip away at it is
you often find that the more extreme the intervention, the more extreme the rebound. And this has been seen again both with people I've worked with and in like medical studies, is the more extreme you drop your calories, the more extreme the training program, if you're not used to it, is again you end up hating it. Or the diet's so restrictive you can't enjoy your food or your life, you can't go out to eat and socialize, that kind of thing, is eventually there's a breaking point and you basically just go, nope, I've had enough. And then you often drop everything you'd been doing because it was horrible, go back to what you were doing before. And some people rebound even worse than they were before they decided to make a change. And some people just kind of like, they drop off and kind of return to where they were originally. So,
and then it's harder to get going again because it was such an awful experience.
Yeah, once you've had a bad experience, like with anything, is you're very timid about trying it again.
And that's the end of part 1 in our 3-part special with Tom. Part 2 is next in our series. If you'd like to find out more ways that you can work with me, then head over to happinesshealthrelationshipspodcast.com, and I'll see you on the next episode.